Hello and welcome to Americorps Vista and the first webinar of your orientation, Countdown to Vista Service. This brief period before you start service next week is really a great opportunity to learn about how Vista works, your Vista benefits, and much more. I'll toggle on my video for introductions. So hello, my name is Chris Hawks and I'm joined here by Andy King. We will be your host today from Americorps Vista. You will also see our colleagues in the chat and Q&A from the Vista Member Support Unit. We have Gina Viner and Jacob Doney, as well as Catherine Burke and Larry Boggs. So a big team to help with your questions as we go through this webinar. And also, if you have any technical issues, again, you'll hear from Steve Gray or Kim Adams if you use that raise hand feature. And I just want to say it was great to see your responses in the chat at the beginning about what motivated you to apply to your Vista position. Always great to see those, so thanks for your responses. We certainly know this is an exciting time for you as you're gearing up to start your year of service. So I'm super happy to be here with you today. I'll pass it on to Andy.
All right, and hi, this is Andy King. I want to add my welcome as well, and really thank you for joining Americorps Vista. I'm happy to have this opportunity to meet with you today. I hope that this year will be a really powerful experience for you, and I look forward to helping you as you're getting started out. So here's a look at our agenda for today. We'll start out with a brief overview of the Americorps Vista program and your Vista member orientation. Then we'll jump into some of the burning questions that you might have, whether those are questions for your Vista project and your site supervisor, or questions for some other contacts, which we'll get into later, and questions for our Vista staff here. Then we'll take a quick look at the Vista terms and conditions of service, and then we'll open it up for your questions, as Chris indicated. Finally, we have a few important reminders for you before we sign off. We're going to ask for your feedback about our presentation, and then we'll wrap up. So here are our goals for this session. First and foremost, we've asked you to log in because we, here at Americorps, we want to have a chance to connect with you and to help ease you into your service year. We know that this webinar is a great way for you to meet with other new Americorps members who are also starting out, and it's a way for you to begin building connections with your colleagues across the country. We'll also take time today to reinforce some of the important details about your Americorps service. We know there's a lot of information that's coming at you from our office and possibly from your project site. So we want to take a few moments today to highlight some of the critical pieces of information so they don't get missed. You may have already seen them, but we're going to underscore them, and apologies in advance for any repetition. And finally, we want you to leave this webinar with a really good sense of where you can find answers to additional questions that you might have. With our limited time together today, we might not be able to answer all your questions, though we're going to work hard to get to as many of them as we can in the Q&A. So with that, Chris, you want to get us started?
Yeah, absolutely. It is my pleasure to give you this official welcome to Americorps and Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTA as the acronym. And there are just over 200, about 210 VISTA members beginning service with you this month. And currently, just over 4,000 VISTA members are serving in rural and urban areas in all 50 states and in several U.S. territories and tribal nations. And as a new member of VISTA, you are joining a national service program with a very rich history. VISTA has been fighting poverty and building communities for more than 50 years. And our strength comes from the talent, the motivation, and the energy of our members, like you. So let me really thank you for stepping up to share your skills and share your passion to serve our communities. Thank you so much. It truly is an honor for me to welcome you on behalf of the Vista program. And here on this slide, you'll see an image that shows the Vista program structure with key partners that make your service possible. You can see there are several layers that help support Vista projects and Vista members like you. Now, the first is the Americorps Headquarters located in Washington, D.C. Americorps also has regional offices across the country. In those offices, Americorps staff review and approve proposals for new Vista projects and approve the placement of members into those projects. The regional office is a very helpful resource for Vista members who maybe have concerns about their assignment that the supervisor cannot resolve. So you can reach them by email using the state abbreviation at cns.gov. So if we take an example here would be Texas. If you're serving in Texas, you can reach your regional office by emailing tx@cns.gov, or my home state, North Carolina, nc@cns.gov to reach your regional office. And in this image, you can also see the sponsoring organization is listed along with your supervisor. Your sponsor and supervisor will be your day-to-day support and really provide all the details on your project work. At our Americorps headquarters, you will be supported by the VTU, or Vista Training Unit, and the VMSU, or Vista Member Support Unit, among other departments. If you can't find the answer to a benefits-related question on Americorps.gov or maybe from the Vista Member Handbook, the VMSU specifically is a super helpful resource for questions regarding your benefits, both now and throughout your year of service. And this year, you will be joining thousands of Vista colleagues around the country to fight poverty. The Vista program mission is to strengthen organizations that fight poverty, and we do that by deploying Americorps members to serve in local community agencies. The Vista headquarters includes multiple teams and 30 staff. Staff teams include the member support and training units that we just mentioned, along with the program impact and marketing and outreach. Many of our staff include service alumni of Americorps, Americorps State and National, NCCC, Vista, the Peace Corps, and more. Myself, I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer from Belize in 2010 to 12. And again, during your service year, specifically the Vista Member Support Unit, or VMSU, will be your point of contact for any benefits-related questions. They'll be super helpful.
All right, so let's focus for a few minutes on you and your role in the Vista program. The role of the Vista member is to support the organization's mission by providing solutions that enhance efficiency and build capacity by raising money, developing systems, recruiting volunteers, and creating lasting change. Vista members are recruited by their sponsoring organizations, or maybe they find service opportunities on their own and apply directly to Vista projects through My Americorps. And speaking of recruitment, we have a quick chat question for you to get you warmed up. How were you recruited to serve in Vista? Did your sponsoring organization recruit you directly, or did you find the position on your own? So if you would please take a moment, type your answer in the chat, and again, remember to send it to everyone so that your colleagues can see. And all right, it looks like a lot of you found the position on your own. A number of you mentioned a couple of websites outside of the My Americorps portal, which is fine. We know that the people are looking in other places, so that's, we go where people are looking. But then, there's a number of you who knew about Americorps, apparently. You went to Americorps.gov and you looked for it there. So great. And then a number of you also mentioned that they found you, that your sponsor reached out directly to you and recruited you in some way to fill the position. So great. Well, thank you for participating in that. So as you've probably heard over the last few minutes, there's a large and diverse group of us on the webinar today. Yet, no matter what your status is or how you came to apply and accept your Vista position, all Vista members have a few things in common. So I want to just review those with you now. First, you and your Vista colleagues are making a 1-year, that is a 365-day full-time commitment to strengthen and support your community through your service. Next, central to all Vista member service is an important document called the Vista Assignment Description, or VAD. We'll be looking more at that a little bit later. The VAD provides an overarching goal of your project. It explains the objectives that you're working towards during your year of service, and it lays out the specific activities that you will complete to accomplish those objectives. All Americorps members have, all of Americorps Vista members have a Vista assignment description. And you can find your VAD on your member homepage in your account in My Americorps. And that, of course, is located at my.americorps.gov. It's important to know that your VAD may have been written before you were recruited or selected for your project. So some updates may be in order before you actually dive into serving. So you'll want to be sure to check in with your supervisor next week and talk about whether any refinements would be necessary for your VAD. When we meet again on Monday's webinar, we'll go into more detail about capacity building and the unique nature of your Vista service. So you'll want to make sure you have your VAD handy by next Monday, your first day of service. So next, let's get a little bit more information about your service. We have another chat activity here. Please take a moment to type your answer to this question. In what city or town will you be serving? So of course, there's a lot of you and it's moving really quickly, and I'm seeing places all over the country, which is incredible. And it's great to see, cities and small towns, places I've never heard of, places I've been to, places that I haven't been to but I want to go to. We've got locations all over the continental U.S. I saw Puerto Rico come up. I saw Virgin Islands earlier. A lot of rural locations here, which makes sense because poverty takes all forms and it shows up all over the place. So glad to hear that so many of you are in so many different locations. And based on what you see here, you might be finding there are some other Vistas who will be serving close to where you are. And we know, based on the Americorps applications that you submitted and your service placements, that we have members starting out this month in so many different communities and many different types of Vista projects.
Yeah, and kind of tying into that, it's great to see such a variety of locations. So let's get a sense of how many folks will relocate to serve. So in just a second, a poll will open for you, and we'll ask that you just indicate yes or no. This will be, a really quick poll, just to get a little bit more information about you to see if you're relocating to your service site or not. So see the responses coming in. If for any reason the poll does not appear for you, please feel free to type in the chat yes or no as to whether you are relocating in order to serve in Americorps. Looks like the responses are slowing down a bit, so just give it another couple of seconds and we will close out the poll. And just looking at the response, so about a quarter, 24% are relocating, while 76% are not, are serving in your home or local communities. So great to see. Always great to see. That's a little bit, say that's a little bit less than average. Typically, it's It varies, but typically it's about a third, so maybe 33% would be relocating. So a little low this time, but great to see and great to know. So thank you for your responses. And for those of you who have yet to relocate, wishing you the best of wishes and just a safe and easygoing time as you relocate to your new site. And today's webinar is one part of a multifaceted orientation that all new Vista members complete. On the far left of this graphic on your screen, you can see the phases of your orientation and some of the major tasks in the blocks to the right of each phase. This structure is also reflected in the Vista member orientation learning path on the Vista campus. So although you may or may not start off by teleserving, if you are teleserving, your supervisor will still be providing you with an on-site orientation and training to guide you as you start your year of service. So that on-site orientation and training is whether you're teleserving or if you're on-site. And the phases of your Vista orientation include pre-service, which is where we're at right now, your first day of service, and in-service. And it's good to know that orientation to your Americorps service is really an ongoing process and involves a number of people. We know your position will be a complex one, and it takes a bit of time and effort to get you started off strong. So let's talk through some of the really important elements of the first two phases of your orientation. So pre-service. As part of your Vista member orientation, you are required to complete several courses and tutorials online. And we know that many of you have already completed these, so we won't dwell on this slide for very long, but we do want to point out what is due. Now, these online courses are located on the Vista member orientation learning path on the Vista campus and must also be completed before you begin service. And if you haven't done so already, please be sure to access the learning path on the campus. And you can do this by going to learn.americorps.gov. You'll have to create an account there if it's your first time visiting the site. And this account is separate from your My Americorps account. And once signed in, you'll just click Catalog in the menu near the top, then locate the Vista member orientation learning path and subscribe and join the training to start. The Terms and Conditions course that you'll find on that learning path, it's linked to your My Americorps account. So you can certify your acceptance there. So once you complete the Terms and Conditions course on the campus, you can certify your acceptance in your My Americorps account. And you must accept the Terms and Conditions of service in order to start your Vista service. And we know there's a lot to do before Monday. And again, you can keep track of your progress on the coursework and forms by following the VMO learning path on the Vista campus. And this was noted in the guide to entering Vista service that was sent out last Monday. But just as a reminder, as you progress through the VMO learning path, a green check mark will indicate that you've completed an activity or module. Please ignore any percentages listed under the score column and instead focus on the green check marks as you track completion. We recently upgraded the campus and we're still working on getting those scores accurately represented, but what you need to focus on are the green check marks.
All right, so in addition to the coursework on the campus that Chris was just talking about, you'll need to complete a few onboarding forms. These include direct deposit, so we can pay your living allowance, a federal tax withholding form, also known as a W-4, a form about unpaid compensation information, and then a selection for your end of service benefit. All of these forms are located at my.americorps.gov. And if you haven't yet completed them, please plan on doing it right away. We need these forms to officially enroll you in Americorps and to process your living allowance and other service benefits. So we'd like to have all that done tomorrow if possible. There are a number of benefits available to members, and if you haven't already, we highly encourage you to go through the benefits information that's available on Americorps.gov. So I imagine you may have a lot of questions about what your first day of service might look like. So here's what we know. Your first day of service will be this coming Monday, that's December 6th, 2021. That day will begin your orientation to your project site and getting oriented to your specific duties. Your supervisor may have prepared a formal agenda for you, and they may have set up meetings or other activities. The day one schedules vary by project, so you'll want to check in with your supervisor this week about what to expect and what materials you'll need on your first day. And along with starting your on-site orientation on Monday, Chris and I will present your second orientation webinar called Launching Your Vista Service. We'll be back online with you for the launching webinar at the same time. That's 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, just like today's webinar. And as with this webinar, you'll receive an email with participation details in the next day or two. The link to join can also be found in the Guide to Entering Vista Service that you got by email last week. It's also the exact same link that you used to join today. On next week's webinar, we'll go a little bit deeper into the Vista program. We'll look more closely at your Vista assignment description, and we'll talk about some available resources for you. We'll also have time again for your questions to make sure that you're in good shape for your first week of service. And on Monday, we will administer the oath of service. That officially swears you in to Americorps Vista service.
Okay, looking at our agenda, next up we're going to dive into a bunch of common questions that Vistas tend to have and answer as many as we can today. So we imagine you have a ton of questions about this new Vista adventure that you're embarking on. Totally understandable. And typically, new Vista member questions fall into one of three categories. So there's questions for your project, sponsoring organization, or supervisor, questions for other contacts, and questions for Vista. And today we'll review some of the most important and time-sensitive questions new Vista members ask. So in some cases, you may have questions about the office setting at your Vista project, maybe your work schedule, or more. On the screen, you can see a reminder of two questions that are listed in the Vista member orientation FAQs, that document that was sent this morning, the frequently asked questions. In addition, you may want details on something like the office dress code or maybe what you should bring to your first day on site. So for these types of questions, please reach out early and often to your project supervisor. This person will be able to orient you to your specific project site, the community where you'll serve, and the people you'll work with this year. So reach out to your supervisor. If you don't know who your supervisor is, reach out to your point of contact that you've had through this application process. If you still don't have a point of contact, remember your regional office, state initials at cns.gov. They will be able to identify and put you in contact with your supervisor. And I'm sure that you have specific questions about some of the benefits of Vista service. So on this screen, you can see two of the most frequently asked questions we receive at Vista headquarters. One of them being, does the Vista healthcare cover my current medication? And does my student loan qualify for deferment or forbearance? And because these types of questions are very personal to you and our Vista staff doesn't really have those details, you'll need to reach out to other contacts to find those answers. So specifically, for the healthcare questions, you can check out the website for the Vista Healthcare Benefit Administrator. They're called IMG, International Medical Group, and you can find a plethora of information at their website, which is AmericorpsVista.imglobal.com. You can find that website. It's all over Americorps.gov. You see it on the slide right here. It's also in the Guide to Entering Vista Service. That link to that website is all over the place. On the site, there has a full plan as well that you can read through, as well as contact information if you need to contact IMG for those specific questions. And then the question on the loans, review the details in the Vista member handbook. There's a lot of details there, but then reach out to your specific lender because they're going to be the ones who will know if the eligibility for deferment or forbearance. And finally, I'm sure you have a lot of questions for our Vista team. So as noted in the frequently asked questions, our staff are often asked about the required background check, healthcare coverage, relocation benefits, the living allowance, and working outside of the Vista position. So let's walk through each of these quickly.
All right, so first up, question, how do I complete the criminal history check? This one is a really big to-do item on your orientation checklist. As you probably read, you'll be required to undergo a background investigation before you start service. And to do that, you'll securely submit a little bit of information online so that we can complete a background check at no cost to you. You'll receive an email from a sender says Strativia LLC, or the email address shows as support@checker.com. That email will have instructions on how you can securely submit the required information for the background check. Once you receive that email, you need to fill out that little form within 7 days. But we ask that you do it right away. It's really quick and simple. And the sooner you do it, the sooner we can get you processed and get you ready for activation. So to make sure that we can continue to stay in contact with you, make sure that your email address in My Americorps is correct and up to date. We know some of you are moving, and that might have implications for your email. As I mentioned, you're required to submit the online background check information within 7 calendar days of getting the email. And if you don't get that done on time, it could result in a delay in actually starting service, right? Because we've got to have that done before you begin, and we don't really want that delay to happen. If you have questions about the process, you can email our colleagues at vistafingerprint@cns.gov. That email address is included in the Guide to Entering Vista Service that Chris emailed you last week. And once your FBI background investigation is completed, we'll compare the results to any disclosures that you may have made in your Americorps application or a disclosure form if you needed to submit one of those. And as long as everything lines up, you won't hear from us. So no news is good news. Next, let's take a quick look at the healthcare benefits that the Vista program offers. In about 2 weeks, you're going to get an email from IMG. That's the healthcare administrator that Chris mentioned. That email message is going to ask you to select a benefit, and then it'll give you instructions for how to enroll in that benefit. So it'll be about your 2nd week of service when you're actually able to do the signing up, but your coverage is going to be effective your official start date, which is next Monday. If you need proof of coverage during your 1st week, or you actually have to go get medical care, you can reach out to IMG and they can provide you with a temporary coverage card that you can use in the meantime. And as a reminder, the Vista program offers 2 different health benefit options. The healthcare allowance is for those of you who have health coverage now, like you have private insurance, you're covered by Medicaid. The other one, the Vista Health Benefit Plan, is for Vista members who don't have any other health coverage. To get one of these benefits, you have to enroll. There's no automatic enrollment. again, you'll do this in about 2 weeks when you get that email from IMG, and then you'll have 60 days from your start of service to actually sign up, right? So you've got some time, but why wait? Just get it done. The sooner you sign up, the sooner you get your benefits. And then if something happens during your year of service and your situation changes and your health coverage situation changes, say you turn 26 and you're no longer covered under your parents' plan, then you can reach out to IMG to let them know about the change and to make a change in your benefit selection. You want to do that ideally about 30 days before that change is going to go into effect so that they have time to get you set up and switch you over from one plan to the other. This health coverage is an important benefit and it's time sensitive, and the type of benefit you can receive will depend on your current healthcare coverage situation. So if you haven't looked into that yet, you'll want to do that in the next few days.
Okay, next question. Am I eligible for Vista's relocation benefit? A common question we receive. So each year, a number of new Vista members relocate to serve in a different community. We just saw from that poll we had on our webinar today about a quarter, I think it was 24% of you, indicated you're relocating and to a new site. So here's how to know if you are eligible for the Vista relocation benefits. If you have relocated more than 50 miles from your home of record to your service site, or if you will be relocating within 45 days, you may qualify for a relocation travel allowance and one-time settling in allowance. If you are eligible for financial travel support, you should have already received an email from the Vista Member Support Unit, or VMSU, which that email would have included a relocation allowance request form for you to complete and return to the VMSU. If you relocated or if you plan to relocate more than 50 miles to your service site, but you have not received an email confirmation, or if you just have any questions about the relocation form, please reach out to the VMSU. You can see their email address on this slide. It's vmsu@cns.gov for any questions on relocation. Next question, how will I receive my living allowance? So let's take a moment to talk about your living allowance. And actually, before we even talk about it, let's ask a question. Does anyone know when you will be getting your first living allowance payment, when that's scheduled for? Just type in the chat if you know the answer. Your first living allowance payment will be direct deposited on what date? See, 60 days. I hope it's not 60. I hope it's earlier than that. But 20th, let's see, the 24th, unsure, see the 11th, the 25th. So it's a decent range. 2 weeks after the start, some other question marks of not being sure. That's totally okay. That's why we're here. Okay. So let's take a look at the answer. So your first living allowance is scheduled to be deposited on December 24th. So most Vista members are paid directly by Americorps, and that's every 2 weeks on Fridays. However, some members are paid directly by their sponsoring organization, and their pay calendar may be slightly different. From time to time, it could be different. So if that's the case, your supervisor can tell you if you will be paid by them and share their pay schedule. Now, federal taxes are withheld from your living allowance, but state taxes are not. So you must determine your own level of responsibility for state taxes. And those are state taxes based on the state that your project is located at, that you're serving in. We suggest you check in with your state tax office for more details on that. And if you are paid by Americorps Headquarters, you can access your living allowance statement, so each statement every 2 weeks, in your My Americorps account. If you're paid directly by your Vista sponsor, you will receive pay statements from them. And also on the living allowance, how much is my living allowance is a common question. So the amount you receive in your living allowance, the biweekly payments, will depend on where your service site is located. This is because pay rates vary by county. So if you haven't already, please access the pay rate chart that's located on that's located on Americorps.gov to verify the amount you will receive. Just please note that when you access this document, you can see Kim just entered that link in the chat. The pay rates show the gross pay, so they do not show the amount of federal taxes that will be deducted from your living allowance. And in order to ensure that you receive your living allowance, it is critical to complete the direct deposit information correctly. So if either the routing number or account number you entered for direct deposit is not correct, you will not receive your living allowance payment as scheduled. And please note, you'll have to wait at least 2 more weeks until the next pay period to be paid. So please get this correct. You can find the routing number and account number on your checks if you have them, or go to your online banking site and look at an account statement to find both. You may also, and I would recommend, if you're unsure, to call your bank just to be sure you have the correct information. Because please double, triple, quadruple check that the numbers are accurate. We want you to get paid. We do. We do not want you to have to wait, another 2 weeks just because a couple of numbers were off. So please make sure that's accurate in your My Americorps accounts.
All right, so our next frequently asked question is, can I work another job while serving in Vista? And as noted in the Vista Terms and Conditions course on the campus, which you may have already completed, it's possible Vista members may be able to work another job during their service terms. There are a few conditions, of course, in order for that to be possible. First, the outside job must not interfere with your Vista schedule or other requirements of your position. You need to discuss the demands of the other job with your supervisor and confirm that it will not prevent you from successfully completing your Vista responsibilities. And your supervisor must indicate their approval on an outside employment form. We'll drop a link to that form in the chat, so you'll be able to download it. Your supervisor should also have access to that form. Thank you, Kim. So those are just a few of the questions that new Vista members most frequently ask. And hopefully by going through those, we may have answered some questions that you were already thinking of. So at this point, prior to your service, it's understandable that you still may have a lot of questions that we haven't yet answered, right? Some of those questions might be for your project supervisor. Some may be for other contacts like your student loan lender or IMG. And some of those might be for us here at Americorps Vista. So we hope that this quick review is helpful and that you now have a better idea of where you can go to find additional information. All right, so let's check in on our agenda again. So far, we've reviewed Vista's mission and structure. We've looked at your orientation, some of the most pressing questions that you may have. And at this time, as we mentioned earlier, we'll invite you to share any follow-up questions or questions that come up during our next agenda item. You can use the Q&A feature, which is located at the bottom of the slides. And before we wrap up today, we're going to work through as many of your questions as possible. All right, so next up, we're going to take a brief look at some of the concepts that are covered in the Vista Terms and Conditions course.
And as you know, there is a required course on the Vista campus that covers the rules of participation in Americorps. That is, what's allowable while you are serving as a Vista member. And since Vista members are bound by a variety of laws, regulations, and other rules, We want to make sure you understand them from day one so you can feel comfortable in your new position. And if you have already completed that terms and conditions course, which many of you have, our next activity should be pretty easy for you. And if you haven't yet completed the course, this will help emphasize some of the most sensitive issues. So on the course, here you see on this slide are the categories of activities addressed in the terms and conditions course. As a review today, Andy and I will walk through a couple of real life scenarios to see whether or not these are allowable according to Vista's terms and conditions. And we'll do that by presenting several scenarios, and we'll just ask you to indicate yes or no in the chat. You can type Y or N, that's totally fine for each scenario. So I'll read out the scenario, and here's the first scenario. I can voice my political opinions using social media where my profile identifies me as an Americorps member. So per the terms and conditions, are members allowed to do this? Yes or no? So we'll give it a few 15, 20 seconds to make sure everyone gets a chance to respond. See the chat flying by, and I would guess that it's 80% no, maybe more, a lot of no's. Few yeses in there, and still some responses coming in. So we'll give it another couple seconds. Probably not. Yeah, a few, I'm not sure. So yikes. Okay, let's check out the answer then. So here's the answer for Vista's terms and conditions. Yes, you can have Americorps listed on your personal social media profile and voice your own personal political opinions as part of your online life. Now, however, and the reason many of you may have said no is always that however or the but. However, you cannot represent yourself as a spokesperson for Americorps or for Vista or for your sponsor. Additionally, you can voice political opinions on your own time, but not while serving at your site or while teleserving, nor while using any of the equipment at your site. And that would include the Wi-Fi network on your office computer if you're serving on site. So please keep that in mind. Also, you should not put the Americorps logo as your profile picture when voicing political or other sensitive opinions on social media. So when in doubt, keep your Americorps service and political activity completely separate, but the answer here is yes.
All right, that was a tough one. Here's our next scenario. I can demonstrate in a political rally. So again, per the terms and conditions, are you allowed to do this? Indicate Y or N. All right, so you guys are really fast. A lot of yeses coming in and some question marks and some maybe caveats. Yeah, all right. So a few no's, a few other answers mixed in there, but it looks like the overwhelming majority of you are saying yes. So let's go ahead and reveal the answer, which is yes. You can demonstrate in a political rally, but here are those caveats, and many of you alluded to these. You have to be doing it on your own time, right? So this is not part of your official service time. And you have to do it when you're not identified as an Americorps member, right? So you're not wearing any branded logo gear, anything like that. And you're not perceived to be an Americorps member. So it's that last part, that perceived to be an Americorps member, that's an important consideration. Since as we saw back at the start of the session, we know some of you are serving in a small town or a local area where even though you're not necessarily wearing your Americorps gear, people are going to know that you're the Americorps member, right? It's a small community, or you're out there and you're very visible, you're doing a lot of outreach work, and so people are going to know you. So you've got to be really careful around those perceptions. So when in doubt about a specific activity, it's best to consult with your supervisor or if you really want to be sure, or maybe your supervisor is a little unclear, you can reach out to your Americorps regional office to get clarification before you would take any action.
Okay, next up, what do you think about this one? I can ask people to donate money to a partisan political candidate as long as it's on my own time and I'm not identified as an Americorps member. So yes or no per the terms and conditions. See the responses coming in. Looks like a bit more of a mix here. Seems to trend yes. I would say it's like maybe 60-40 yes, but we'll give it another few seconds. Make sure everyone gets a chance to respond if they wish to. But it does look like it's slowing down. I'm still standing. Oh, with 5 straight no's, I'm gonna lean back to 55-45. Okay, let's check. Let's check what the answer is, and this is an important one. The answer is no. You cannot raise money on behalf of a partisan political candidate at any time during your Americorps year. So it doesn't matter if it's off duty or at home or while not identified as an Americorps member, that doesn't matter. That's because a federal law called the Hatch Act prohibits all fundraising for partisan political candidates. So you cannot fundraise, but you can, however, you can raise funds in support of an issue or a cause on your own time, and when you're not identified as an Americorps member. So you can raise funds for an issue or cause. You cannot raise funds for a partisan political candidate. So thank you for going through these scenarios in your participation. We know the terms and conditions of your Americorps service, they contain a lot of rules. And I'm seeing in the chat that there's like, yeah, these are tricky. Yeah, they can be tricky and they can be difficult to distinguish. And we know that these issues in particular tend to raise a lot of questions for new members. So that's why we brought those up. But again, we want you to feel comfortable getting started. So if you have questions on anything like this, please don't hesitate to reach out to your project supervisor, or if maybe they don't know the answer, reach out to your Americorps regional office if you have questions about any of these activities. That's what they're there for. They're there to support you and help you through these. And again, you'll need to complete the full terms and conditions. If you haven't completed those, please, just a quick reminder, please complete that on the campus and then indicate that you've completed it in your My Americorps account. Okay, looking at our agenda, moving on down. I know we've covered quite a bit of information, but let's take a few moments to address some of the questions you may have for Vista. So we'll take a look at the Q&A. Just a friendly reminder, please enter any questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, just because the chat can go fast and we'll lose questions in the chat.
All right, so we've had a number of really good questions that have come in. We'll cover a few of those, since it seems like most of you would benefit from hearing about them. So one of them is a question sort of about your living allowance and stuff related to that. The question is, where can we go to get a letter indicating the amount of the living allowance we're going to receive, and then sort of the terms of our Americorps service before we start? You know, some of you might need that for, maybe applying for housing or, to sign a lease or whatever. The answer to that question is you can reach out to the Vista Member Support Unit, and they can generate that information for you before you get started if you need it now. Next week, after you're started and after all the paperwork is in and your account is activated in My Americorps, you're able to actually generate a letter on your own. And we'll look at that, I think, next week to show you how to do that. But for now, if you need that kind of documentation, the Vista Member Support Unit can help you out with that. And as Chris mentioned earlier, there is if you're curious to know how much your living allowance is going to be, there is a document on AmeriCorps.gov in the benefits section for Vista members. It shows by county what the living allowance amount is. And that would be the county where you are serving.
Yeah, and I'm gonna post in the chat again. I know Kim already did, but that the calendar. So I saw a question in the chat earlier about, okay, so we're not getting paid until December 24th. Does that mean we're getting paid from December 6th through the 24th? And the answer to that is no. It's still, a 2-week thing. I think the best way to look at it is by accessing this link to the calendar that is in the chat right now. So it depends on the pay period. So the pay period for your first pay period starts on December 5th, Sunday, and goes for 14 days. So since you start on the 6th, you will actually be paid for 13 days instead of the typical 14 for your first pay period. So just keep that in mind. Then afterwards, you'll be paid by every other Friday after that for your typical 14-day pay period.
All right, we've got a few questions about health coverage, so maybe we can take those together here. One question was about, are these benefits available to spouses as well as AmeriCorps Vista members? The answer to that is no. We provide benefits only to the Vista member. So if you have dependents or a spouse, they would need to have their own coverage separate from yours. And then a question about the healthcare allowance. Can that allowance be used to cover things like prescription co-pays? And the answer is yes. So it's for out-of-pocket expenses, the patient responsibility portion, or what's sometimes called a co-pay or a co-insurance cost. So when you go to the doctor, you'll pay the first $30, say, and then the insurance will cover the rest. You can get reimbursed for that $30 that you pay, or when you get your prescriptions filled, there's an out-of-pocket piece that you pay. You can get reimbursed for that. Likewise, for some routine dental care and vision care, you can get your out-of-pocket expenses for that with some limits. You can get that reimbursed as well under the healthcare allowance.
And not healthcare related, but just a great question I saw come in about whether should I contact my supervisor this week or next week? I think that was with regards to, preparing for your first day of service. And I would say, well, it's entirely up to you. It's probable that they'll reach out to you before your first day of service. But if you haven't heard from your supervisor or your point of contact at your project about kind of what to prepare for or what to expect, like an agenda for your first day of service, yeah, I would definitely recommend reaching out now this week just to get an idea. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you and answer questions and help prepare you for your start of service. And just a general reminder, if you aren't sure who to contact about that, please reach out to your regional office using the state initials at cns.gov.
All right, and then there were a few questions about, where do I go to complete the terms and conditions course or the other, online coursework for my Vista member orientation. So again, those are found at learn.americorps.gov. If it's your first time there, you'll have to set up an account. It's really quick and easy to do. Once you go in, you'll click on Catalog, and right near the top of the catalog, you'll see a block there that's called Vista Member Orientation. That's where all your coursework for starting Vista is located. So the Terms and Conditions course is there, along with the Civil Rights and Responsibilities course, Those are sort of the two big foundational pieces that are required, part of your required pre-service coursework. And you'll see other information about benefits and your on-site orientation training and the rest. So they're all packaged in that one learning path, as we call it. And it's again at learn.americorps.gov. We ask you to get that done by the end of tomorrow if you can. That, along with your onboarding forms like your direct deposit, right, and your W-4 and the others. Those forms are usually pretty quick to fill out. We ask that you get them done by the end of the day tomorrow, so then first thing Thursday we can go through, and if any follow-up is needed, we can get that squared away before the end of the week. So just a bit of a reminder there.
Yeah, and also on that, what many of you have already seen, or for those of you who maybe have not gone to the learning path, the last two modules are on-site orientation and training, and then recommended early service coursework. Those two modules you can hold off on, and actually we recommend holding off on those modules, on completing those, until you start service next week, because they really coincide and align well with your on-site orientation and training. So that recommended early service coursework would really blend well as you start your service next week. That being said, if you want to get a head start and go ahead and try completing those assignments, you know, by all means, go for it. But I just wanted to point that out in case you're in a time crunch and you're trying to get through all those modules. Those last two are ideally for next week. Andy, see any other? I know the VMSU, we have quite a crew answering questions, and they're getting answered very quickly. So I see two in the queue that are being answered, but it looks like we have already, here's one on the cash stipend versus the education award. Just quickly, I'll say there's a lot of information on Americorps.gov and in the handbook about this. But yeah, your end of service award is one of your required pre-service forms that you need to complete in your My Americorps account. So one of those is to decide between the education award or the cash stipend as your end of service award. So the education award is something that you will receive after completing your year of service. You will have access to it in your My Americorps account, so you can use it to make payments on future tuition expenses at Title IV institutions, or to pay off qualifying eligible student loans, federal student loans. So that's what the education award can be used for. The cash stipend is as it sounds. It's a cash stipend that is deposited into your account at the end of your year of service, and the amounts are quite different. So the education award is $6,000, I believe, 350, around 6,350, I think. And the cash stipend is 1,800. So hopefully that answered your question on the differences there. I would highly recommend, there's a lot of information on Americorps.gov on that though.
All right, so great, thank you for that, Chris, and thanks everyone for taking the time to submit your questions and to listen as we talk through some of the answers. I'll mention we'll have time for additional questions on next Monday's webinar. So if you have other questions that come up and you don't get them answered before then, you can raise them at that time. Next, we're going to turn our attention to a few online resources you have. We'll give you a couple of reminders about things to get done this week, and then we'll wrap up with a couple closing remarks. So what you see on the screen may be very familiar to you. These are the two websites that figure prominently in our conversation today already and in the emails you've been getting. and in the preparation work that you've done so far for your Vista member orientation. If you haven't already, you might want to bookmark these sites in your browser so that you can really easily and quickly access them. As a reminder, my.americorps.gov is what we call the My AmeriCorps portal. Sometimes we just call it the portal. This is the site where you applied for your AmeriCorps position. It's where you will complete, if you haven't already, your direct deposit and those other onboarding forms. And then this is also where you can access your Vista assignment description. It's also the place where in a couple of weeks you'll be able to access your living allowance statements. You'll be able to request some of the benefits like loan forbearance. And you can print or save the letter that I mentioned that verifies your AmeriCorps service. The other one, the Vista campus, is located at learn.americorps.gov. This is the website where you complete your onboarding coursework, right? Those tutorials that make up part of your Vista member orientation. You can also connect with other Vista members here by using the Vista Connect page. You can access Vista Connect by clicking in the menu box as demonstrated here. You can see there's a little logo there with the word Vista Connect, or you can go directly to connect.americorps.gov. Here's a snapshot of that Vista Connect homepage where you can connect with your Vista colleagues around the country. You can chat on the forums that are already there. You can make direct connections with others. So we encourage you to check it out, both now and throughout your service. And for example, some Vistas have been using this to find other Vistas who are serving in their areas. And sort of once they find each other, then they schedule an in-person or virtual meetup so they can come together and share ideas with one another.
Okay, and so we just have a few moments left in our session today, and we won't spend much time on this slide, but just one last reminder about the coursework, the onboarding forms, and online criminal history check that are due from you, and these are also reflected in that VMO learning path on the campus. Finally, today we'd love your feedback on the presentation. We want to know, what worked well for you, or how can we improve this presentation? Because we do look at the comments and we do try to improve it for future AmeriCorps members. So yeah, please take a few moments to just complete a brief survey. Shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. And we will use your input right away as we complete preparation for our second webinar next week. So thank you in advance for sharing your feedback. You see the link in the chat right now that Kim shared, and the survey should pop up as you exit Zoom as well. So with that, I just want to take a look and revisit our session goals. So today, I hope that we have started to build some new connections and kind of put faces to names, and that we helped clarify some of that complexity of starting your Vista service. We know this is a busy time for you, and so much information is being sent to you every which way. I hope today's discussion helps clarify some of the AmeriCorps requirements, and perhaps more importantly, helps you know where to go to find information quickly if you need additional information. So thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar from Andy and myself and all of us here at AmeriCorps. Thank you for joining the Vista team. We look forward to seeing you again on Monday, December 6th at 3 p.m., the exact same time as this webinar, for your second webinar where you'll swear in launching your Vista service. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your week.